Hello there. So, some of you probably remember that on my YouTube community page, I put up this poll just a couple of months ago, and you also probably noticed that I started wearing this necklace here. I don't know how well it's really showing up on there, but it's a Trinity knot with a circle in it to make it look more Celtic, and I don't want it to bump against the microphone. Hold on a sec. That's better. And I feel like some of you might be a little confused about that. I haven't really spoken about this publicly, so I figure I may as well just get this out there, explain my thoughts and feelings here. So, I am an atheist, and I have been ever since I reached the age of reason. I think I was about 14, and I was raised in a Christian family, which isn't that strange. It's the majority religion in the United States by a really huge margin, and it's for that reason that a lot of American Christians really don't know how to handle other religions. With the possible exception of Judaism, but even then they view that as like, oh, that's just Christianity, but without the Jesus. But there's more differences, it's more complicated than that. But they just really don't know how to handle other religions, and they certainly don't know how to handle lack of religious belief. Like, I got to a point where I realized, okay, so like, we have all this understanding of the world and the universe. We know the Earth is more than 6,000 years old, and we know that the Earth orbits the sun, and we know that humans evolved from other animals, and just a lot of stuff that contradicts what's in the Bible, and it contradicts what Christians say and what Christians believe, or at least what most Christians say and what most Christians believe. Because there are some who think that God created the universe a couple billion years ago instead of 6,000 years ago, but the literalists, the young Earth creationists, do believe that. And that, along with just looking at the behavior of Christians, is what initially turned me away from their beliefs. And as time has gone on, I've realized, like, okay, yes, like this was created by people a couple thousand years ago who just didn't have a good understanding of the world around them, but now, due to the progression of science and civilization, we do have a better understanding of the world around us, and that's just sort of still there. Like, they can't prove that God is real because God isn't real. None of them are. Like, every religion that has ever existed has been created the same way Christianity was. It was people trying to make sense of the world around them and trying to understand where they come from and where they go after they die. And I can sympathize with that and understand it to an extent, but that doesn't make them correct. And the good news is that even as a non-Christian, my actions are pretty much the same as Christians. Like they don't follow a lot of their own rules, so I don't really feel bad when they say, like, oh, gays are going to hell, you can't get abortion, things like that. I mean, they don't even follow their own rules, so why should the rest of us? But back to the paganism thing. So, Celtic paganism is kind of a misunderstood mythology, belief system, whatever you want to call it, because it's just not very well known the way stuff like Greek mythology and, to a lesser extent, Norse and Egyptian mythology are to the average American. And also, just to be clear, when I say Celtic mythology, I'm really talking about Irish Celtic mythology, because the Celts were not really one group of people. It was a lot of different tribes spread out over a very large area. And I'm more specifically referring to the Irish Celtic mythology here, partially because that's the one I know about, and also because that's the one that has stayed a little bit better preserved than the others, at least in my understanding it has been, because the Celts didn't really write anything down. Like, all of the information we have about their religion comes from other people, specifically from Christian monks in Ireland who just wrote down their old stories and their old myths and stuff. And I think a lot of those monks misunderstood stuff. And this is a problem that the Norse also have, and other pagan groups as well, because unlike, say, the Greeks and the Egyptians, most of these guys, again, didn't write stuff down, so it was like other outsiders who wrote it down, and outsiders either didn't like them, didn't understand things, or both. And so the sources that have survived to the modern day are patchy at best, or just outright wrong at worst. Because if you look at the pantheon, note the quotes around that, in Irish mythology, they're often called the Tuatha Dé Danann, and it's spelled like this. Irish Gaelic spells words really weird. So the Tuatha Dé Danann, or just Tuatha Dé for short, if you look at the myths, they don't really spend their time doing godlike stuff. You know, they don't bring the storms like Zeus with his thunderbolts. They don't cause earthquakes like Poseidon with his... Actually, I don't know exactly why the god of the ocean causes earthquakes in Greek mythology, but whatever. He causes earthquakes and tsunamis and stuff. They don't pull the sun across the sky in a chariot like Helios. They mostly spend their time doing regular human stuff. And they do have some magical powers, and some of them live supernaturally long lives as well, but they all die of old age eventually. You know, like you'll have kings of the Tuatha Dé who were king for 80 years and then they died of old age. Like, it's clear that the Tuatha Dé are something more than humans, but I don't think they're gods. That is a controversial opinion to come to in the pagan community, and I know some of them would be upset with me for saying that, but I'm sorry, I look at the myths and I don't see them as gods or even really godlike figures. What I'm getting at here is that Irish mythology is a religion that doesn't really have gods, at least not that we can tell. And again, I know that's a controversial thing to say, but once I realized that, it started to appeal to me a bit more. Because again, you can look at figures like Ondagda, Onmorrigan, Lug Lamfada, and whoever, and you can gain some wisdom from their stories. Yeah, you can gain some, I don't know, inspiration from looking at them and what they accomplished, but you also don't have to believe that they were literal gods, or that they are literal gods who are around and granting us blessings and stuff if we leave them sacrifices. And hell, they probably might have been real people at some point, but I don't know how to put this. Like, the legend has grown so much over the years that the original real things that they did are almost have very little to do with what the myths say. And on top of that, like I said, we have some information on the Irish Celtic religion, but it's very, very spotty and very patchy information. Like, we have some of their symbols and stuff, but a lot of those symbols also existed in other cultures at various points in time, such as the Triskelion, which I got tattooed on my arm just a couple months ago. It's a Triskelion, sometimes also called a Celtic spiral. Like, things like that have existed before. Or, like I showed you earlier, the Trinity knot that I have on my necklace. Like, the specific one I have has the circle in it, which I believe is more specifically Celtic in nature, but there are other cultures, other civilizations that have used very, very similar symbols. And I've seen people say that these symbols mean a lot of different things. Again, the Celts themselves just didn't write this down, and so a lot of this is left up in the air. It's left to speculation. For what it's worth, the Celtic spiral to me is the three realms: the land, the sea, and the sky. And the Trinity knot is life, death, and rebirth. That's why the circle is there. Because when you die, your body, all the nutrients and everything that make it up, eventually it's broken down and consumed by other creatures. And then those creatures are able to live, and they go on, and then they die, and their bodies are broken down. And so it's this cycle. And so basically, as I started thinking about Celtic paganism more, and I started coming more to my own conclusions, which, again, a lot of these are going to be controversial, but that's just how I came to these conclusions, and I was realizing that this isn't a whole lot different than how I already thought and how I already saw things. Like, I already didn't believe in any god or gods because they're not fucking real, and I already understood that the natural phenomena of the world just sort of happen. You know, the sun rising and setting, storms, earthquakes, all that. Those things aren't caused by any anthropomorphic being with thoughts and feelings. It just sort of happens. And once I realized the idea that the Irish Celts, I don't want to say they worshipped nature necessarily, but they had a lot of reverence for it. And to me, that struck a chord. Like, to me, that's saying, okay, we worship life itself. This is in stark contrast to the religion I was raised in, because Christianity worships death. And again, I know that's going to be controversial, but Christians really don't view their actual lives as important. They view it as like an audition or a job interview for getting into heaven, and then you live for eternity in heaven. So like, what's 70 or 80 years on earth? It doesn't matter what you do to people. It doesn't matter how much suffering you cause, because you're getting yourself into heaven, and ideally you'll get them into heaven too. Like, sure, outlawing abortion causes a lot of women to die from preventable problems, but they don't care because, well, this life just isn't important to them. And again, I know that sounds harsh, but I've been around Christians my entire life. I've been surrounded by them. I've lived in a country controlled exclusively by them, and that's just how they approach things. They worship death. And as somebody who doesn't believe in an afterlife, because again, it's not fucking real, I just can't abide that. So looking at this counter religion, whatever you want to call it, just philosophy, belief system, which sees life as something that is not only sacred, but never really ends. Because, again, we're all just caught in this cycle of life, death, and rebirth. You know, all the individual cells that make up your body are all alive, but they're constantly dying and being replenished, and then dying and being replenished, until eventually your body can no longer go on, and sure, the person that you were is gone, but new life springs from you afterwards. So life is a continuous process. It's been going on for, what, 1 billion years on Earth? Maybe longer elsewhere? But it's not something that we have to be sad about it ending, because when you think about it, it never does end. And just in our current conscious form, we get to experience a small part of that. And that's something that took some getting used to, certainly, but I'm okay with it. I've made peace with that. I'm aware that this isn't exactly a deep dive into my religious beliefs and convictions here, but also, again, I don't know if you'd really say I have a religion here. That's just kind of the basic overview. And I think if you asked a lot of people the right questions, you'd find that a lot of people are in a similar position, where their religious beliefs just don't add up that much, and they haven't thought about them that much. So I guess I can answer questions in the comments if I left anything out, but the big one being, am I an atheist? Well, yeah. Am I a pagan? Yeah. Am I both at the same time? I'm whichever one annoys you the most. like if you're more annoyed by hearing about me worshiping false gods, then I'm a pagan, fuck you. If you're more annoyed with me rejecting all religion because it reminds you that this stuff is kind of stupid when you stop and think about it, then I'm an atheist, fuck you. You know, like, I don't know if we really need to apply a label to every belief and every philosophy that people have, because at the end of the day, none of us really know what the fuck is going on, and we're all just trying to find a way to make it through. So, yeah, I don't have much else to say there. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day.